Street USA. It's a generic term for a town's Main Street business district. But there's nothing generic about Florida's main streets. Each has its very own unique character.
Well, a lot of these buildings, majority of them are locally owned buildings with, mom and pop businesses.
We have almost like a slice of time, stuck in time.
Everybody has the Southern hospitality here. Like, you're going to be greeted with hugs.
History.
Economic development.
We actually opened it as a dream.
Arts and culture, and revitalization.
At the beginning of a redevelopment, people always think that the individuals that start are crazy. Now, of course, people are like, oh, you're a genius.
Stepping onto Main Street can be like stepping back in time to a place before malls and mega shopping centers and jam-packed interstates.
My mom tells stories when she was a young girl that the downtown was the hub of everything.
That was in Arcadia, but it was the same story in towns around the country, one of a thriving downtown that eventually gave way to suburban sprawl in the 1970s.
Downtowns all across the country got to a point where people were leaving. Buildings were not being rented in the downtowns, and a lot of great buildings were being demolished because owners didn't have the money to keep them up.
That's when the National Trust for Historic Preservation began a movement to address the problems facing downtowns. In 1977, they launched a pilot program to revitalize commercial districts in 3 communities: Galesburg, Illinois, Madison, Indiana, and Hot Springs, South Dakota. It was such a success that a few years later, the organization took the Main Street program nationwide.
Thomasville was one of the original Georgia cities, and right off the bat they were doing incredibly well. I think a lot of states started applying for it once they saw the track record it was having in small towns and other places.
Vivian Young was the first coordinator of the Main Street program in Florida when the state joined in 1985. She said she's always been drawn to historic preservation.
I've always had an affinity for it. My father was a carpenter, and he worked on restoration projects like the Dolly Madison House in Washington, D.C., which was on Lafayette Square, and it was one of Jacqueline Kennedy's projects. And he worked on the National Cathedral, and he'd always take me to see his projects, and that just gave me a real affinity for that type of work.
Since the beginning, the program has been administered by the Department of State. As of 2021, the Main Street programs it coordinates number around 50. We spoke to Secretary of State Laurel Lee about the program, meeting her at a shop in Havana, a Main Street town just north of Tallahassee.
The Department of State works with local communities to help them develop plans to bring business and tourism back to these districts and really show the character and the history of many of Florida's local communities.
The department doesn't provide direct funding, but can help communities apply for grants and offers what it calls technical assistance.
We have dedicated staff who work on this program, and we also have other professionals within the Department of State who have helpful knowledge. Those professionals can include some of our archaeologists and historians and our state architect.
But first, communities apply to be part of the program. Vivian Young says 21 applied in the first year. 5 were selected.
I have them ingrained in my brain. Arcadia, DeLand, Ocala, Panama City, and Plant City.
She says it was the enthusiasm of each community that stood out.
I remember when Arcadia applied, they went to the schools and they had school children write letters about what they loved about Arcadia, and we got, hundreds of letters from school children just saying, please pick Arcadia. We love our community. We want it to be, fixed up. We spent a week in each city that was selected, and 5 were selected for the first 3 years, so it was pretty grueling schedule. And then we did kind of charrettes with the community to find out what their vision of their downtown was, and we had monthly Main Street manager meetings, so all the managers in Florida could meet together once a month and, you know, talk about what was working and not working. And then there was a lot of follow-up technical assistance as well. And Florida also had an architect who provided design services to the towns on everything from, you know, signage for businesses to renovating buildings.
In the beginning, the communities also each received $10,000 to get started.
It was very definitely not a grant program. It was really all the technical assistance, but it was felt that $10,000 a community would give them seed money to, you know, help property owners get a new awning on their building or put a new sign. It was a very incremental approach, so it was trying to just look at what small things could be done that kind of gave a visual awareness that change was happening downtown.
At first, the community started small.
But in the early years, you know, they did a watermelon seed spitting contest and made some money and had to open a bank account. You know, I mean, it was kind of that thing, but it was a group of people who really wanted to help this downtown, and which was at about 50% occupancy at the time.
Today, downtown DeLand is at 100% capacity, as is Arcadia. Decades later, many of the other original Main Street communities also thrive. As Secretary Lee explains, they're guided by a 4-point approach that includes economic vitality.
The vision of these programs is to restore a vibrant business culture in downtown Main Street. So the economic vitality piece, and what does a community envision and what have they planned to put together to really bring that business and economic traffic back down to Main Street.
There's also a focus on design.
What is the community's vision for how the Main Street will look? What types of historic buildings will be preserved or promoted in the Main Street? And also the types of retail and the focus that the Main Street program will have.
Promotion is a key point.
We want not only neighbors to come and frequent these businesses and restaurants and shops, but also all of Florida. So if someone is taking a trip and passing by, they know that just off the interstate, there's this special place that they can visit.
Finally, organization.
Who will be involved in the Main Street? What kind of public and private partnerships have been developed to ensure that the program will be implemented and successful?
Each community highlighted in this piece, from Chattahoochee to DeLand to St. Petersburg, has its own priorities. They're also at different stages of developing their downtowns, with some well on their way.
The city of St. Petersburg has as its tagline, live, work, play. And so to us, this is a corridor where you can live, work, and play.
And others still working towards bringing their vision to life.
So I'd imagine anticipating our town in 3 to 5 years is going to look a lot different than it used to.
Next, we'll take a look at how each one is carrying out that 4-point approach to totally transform or just energize their downtowns.
1, 2, 3, 4, 418.
Brandy Foster opened a store in Chattahoochee.
I don't know if anybody's been to Chattahoochee, but Chattahoochee is really on the rebuilding side. We have a lot of new businesses.
She relocated her gift shop here after growing out of a smaller location in nearby Sneads. Hers is one of several new businesses Main Street Chattahoochee has been able to attract to the rural Panhandle town. A big deal for a small community that has been through a lot.
It was a week government agencies and millions of Floridians watched one of the most powerful hurricanes ever spin up in the Gulf and head for Florida.
It was everywhere you looked, devastation. There was no one that was prepared for what happened.
In October 2018, the howling winds of Hurricane Michael tore through the Panhandle, damaging homes and businesses and leaving people without power for weeks. Alicia Hicks-Kuhn of the Main Street Chattahoochee program says the recovery was rough.
There were people that ultimately lost their entire home and just moved away because the devastation hurt them so bad to their core that they just couldn't stay here to recover.
Even 3 years later, storefronts remain empty, some still falling apart on the inside. But Kuhn says there is hope. Her organization gets calls nearly every day from people who want their help to open businesses in Chattahoochee. It usually involves connecting business owners with the right space. It's also about offering something unique. The stores that line most main streets aren't stocked with the same things you'll find at the department store outside town, nor do they offer the same service. Jessica Shavers restored a hurricane-ravaged building in Chattahoochee to open a clothing store for women of all sizes.
When they try on here, we get them to model for us. It don't matter who they are. We like them to model and feel good about themselves and give them positive energy.
And when businesses are successful, they can help the whole community. One restaurant that's bounced back after being sidelined by not only the hurricane, but the COVID pandemic, is drawing diners from all over the Southeast.
We tell them about the dam and the parks around, and they take a drive, and they're just blown away by it. It's a very unique place, and we're thankful to be here.
And Brandy Foster is not only focused on growing her own store, but helping other entrepreneurs.
We try to find things that other locals make, sell, do. Most people in our area are very familiar with Cakes by Marnie, and we have those in the shop. She makes local deliveries to us on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I also have another lady from Mariana who makes all of my door hangers. Her name is Jean Mitchell. And then this week we're actually going to pair up with a local here in Chattahoochee who makes cheese boards and the wooden bowls.
Another North Florida community has made a similar shift. Havana was the place to go to buy antiques and furniture. It still is, but now there's also a focus on local art.
We ended up last year having a plein air art festival that brought in an awful lot of local art. We were overwhelmingly supported by the local artists. And when the event was over, it was like, okay, let's continue to embrace these artists. And so I put a lot of their work in my spot. Later on, we're going to go down and show a gallery. AHA is the name of the gallery, Artist Helping Artists, AHA. And they have a lot of local art. And so in the today's world of Amazons and big box stores, I want something that is unique and just for you. You know, nobody else is going to get that painting. Nobody else is going to get that cutting board. And so that's kind of what we're embracing here.
Terry Paul of Main Street Havana says the new focus is drawing a younger crowd to Havana, not just to shop, but to live.
My board of 14, probably 8 of them are 5th generation Havana people. I'm originally from Florida, mostly Miami. I'd never heard of such a thing. And so we're hoping that we're having our next revitalization right now. We're getting younger people in. COVID has kind of been a boon to us in that people are finding they can work from home. Well, I have lots of land here that's beautiful. I have lots of farmhouses here. You want to get goats, which is the in thing right now? Get you some goats. Come here. You can still close enough to Tallahassee if you need to. So we're starting to bring in the downtown area, stuff that will attract that younger generation. We've got a golf simulator. We've got the galleries I was telling you about. We're working really hard to get a brewery. We've just got some stuff going on to help fill that need for those younger people that are moving into town. So it's an exciting time for us.
Art also plays a major role in design, a category that also ties significantly to historic preservation. Here in St. Petersburg, Interstate 275 cuts right through a neighborhood known as the Deuces Live. But an art project sponsored by the Main Street program aims to turn a negative into a positive in this historically black community that was once home to more than 100 businesses.
If you look at where interstates destroyed communities, probably 85% of the interstates in the United States destroyed historic African American corridors. And not only did it destroy buildings, it destroyed neighborhoods, because you had people who were able to you no longer had residents to support the businesses, which leads to a decline in businesses, and it's that whole downward effect of destroying the neighborhood.
Now, the underpass is the gateway to the Deuces, where murals depict the community's musical past and new LED lighting increases visibility and safety. Beatrice Farrell, the Main Street director, says it's a way of saying everyone's welcome in a community once impacted by segregation.
This corridor, prior to a lot of the destruction of the buildings, had a lot of music on the street. So there were probably 6 or 7 places that you could go to listen to music. There are pictures in the history books of segregated audiences. So you had white people who came to the Manhattan who sat up front, and then you had black people in the back. So even though we say there was integration, it was never fully, there was white integration, but not community-wide integration.
It was at the Manhattan Casino where acts like Louis Armstrong and other notable jazz and blues artists like Ella Fitzgerald performed. The history is laid out on murals throughout town, as well as on interpretive panels that are part of the district's African American Heritage Trail, which is going digital, so visitors can access the information from their mobile phone. Public art and design are also a major attraction for visitors to DeLand.
So over here, you begin to see murals that we have. This is Pioneer Park, and the mural there just shows a lot of things. We have, I think, 11 historic murals that kind of, if you look at them in order, they could tell you the history of what's going on in DeLand.
Butterfly installations also celebrate the city's designation as a monarch city, noted for its efforts to recover and advance monarch butterfly populations. Up in Chattahoochee, for a town that is still in some ways reeling from Hurricane Michael, art, design, and streetscapes will be a key to its recovery.
That looks like a real transformation for that area.
Absolutely. This is going to be like the next big thing for Chattahoochee.
Main Street is working with a grant and other assistance from FEMA that include cooperation with a cadre of state and federal agencies, planners, and architects.
And they all came together to help us figure out a plan of how to plan for the future, how to fix back what we needed to and give it a fresh face, and what could we do to improve it as we were putting it back together.
The plans include a street beautification project that will also include more parking and adjustments to make the area more walkable. Down the road at River Landing, there are plans for a new mountain biking trail and a renewed focus on the area's history.
So you can imagine people would have been crossing this river for thousands of years.
Historic preservation consultant Laura Lee Corbett worked with Chattahoochee Main Street in 2020 to get the town on the National Register of Historic Places. She's also helping them reimagine River Landing, capitalizing on its Native American history. She completed a survey of the area's Indian mounds, which are just part of the landing's extensive history.
Well, the beauty of Chattahoochee Main Street is that they use eco-heritage tourism as kind of one of their hooks. They are a rural community, so retail, of course, is difficult. So we have things like the Native American mounds, an underwater archaeological site here that's called Florida's Inland Graveyard of shipwrecks, if you will. And there's also a 1920s engineering feat, which is the Victory Bridge, which is here. We also have the site of a former British fort that was here and a battle of the First Seminole War. So I can't think of a place in Florida that has all that in one site, and it's compacted right here at River Landing.
While Chattahoochee will look brand new once its plans are complete, a project in Arcadia aims to bring the past back to life.
We can go do, do, re, re, do, do, re, re.
Music is once again flowing from the halls of the historic Heard Opera House, built in 1906. Main Street is just one group participating in its preservation. Chrissy Constantino is a volunteer.
For the last, 30 plus years, it has been everything except a performing space. I was a high school chorus teacher, and I remember being there, none of my kids could have a true performing experience because they didn't have a good place to perform. The high school cafeteria was where we did our Christmas concerts. So it was kind of a goal of mine to be able to find a good performance space for the kids and the community.
At the start of the renovation, the building was privately owned, making it ineligible for most grants. But the community hopes to buy it through a nonprofit. It's an example of one of the challenges for Main Streets, according to Pam Ames.
The biggest challenge I know for us, because we're a small rural town, it's funding. We sometimes have a hard time competing with larger communities. They have the financial backing that we don't have. It's very hard to get sponsors for things just because everyone's tapping the same businesses. And so that's a struggle.
Like Florida, just about every state has Main Street programs, usually coordinated by a state agency. But compared to those, some say state lawmakers could invest more in the program.
I will say, just for the record, that Florida's coordinating program is one of the least funded programs. It could use a whole lot more money from the state.
There's no specific line in the state budget for Main Street. Funds for the Department of State to administer the program come from existing resources allocated to the Division of Historical Resources. Wayne Carter thinks about what the state could do with more funding.
You know, there's more training, there's more opportunities perhaps for grants of varieties that might help communities build their programs.
For most Main Street organizations, a large chunk of funding comes from local governments and their CRAs, or community redevelopment agencies. It's one of many partnerships they form to accomplish their mission.
And what the organization committee does is interface with other entities around the community.
In the Deuces, for example, Main Street works with another group to bridge the digital divide with a program known as Tech Goes Home.
When we talk about the digital divide, there's really three legs of a stool. It's having access to the internet, having devices, and actually the technical knowledge to use the devices. So what Tech Goes Home does is allow individuals, once they complete a class, to get Chromebooks.
In Arcadia, the Opera House restoration is also a multi-organization effort, as was the restoration of the Athens Theater in DeLand.
We got some grants and different things to kind of get the process started, and then the Sands Theater group came in. They were able to relieve Main Street of that, but they finished the project. It was kind of a happy day for both groups, actually. By that time, millions of dollars had been invested into that theater. Which now will produce, events throughout the year and maybe sell 28,000 tickets. Probably has close to $1 million impact on what goes on in the land, throughout year after year.
Once major projects are complete, their Main Street programs will promote their hard work in an effort to get people to come to town and enjoy the new amenities.
Because you want people to come, you want them to see. As a shop owner, you want them to see your wares, but you also want them to see your community as well.
But for many Main Streets, promotion means specific events.
We have Bike Fest, Arcadia Bike Fest. We are going to be starting a second Saturday craft fair. We've also going to have a wine walk at Christmas.
We have a woman locally who makes and donates 50 quilts a year to us, and so we have created a festival around her, and we line up all of the street with all of her quilts, and we also invite some of the local quilter associations to come in and display and or sell their quilts, and she donates 100% of that profits to various renovations that we're doing downtown or to Main Street as a whole.
The Collard Green Festival next in 2022 will be 5 years old. And so greens. Last Juneteenth, there were 3 Juneteenth festivals on the corridor. So 3 unique organizations had festivals on the corridor. As a person, you're just walking from festival to festival.
Some main streets have been awarded for their community efforts. DeLand has received the Great American Main Street Award from the National Main Street Center, and more recently won an America's Main Street Award from an independent business group, beating out nearly 250 other cities. It's a recognition that came with a $25,000 prize and a block party.
That was a lot of fun. We got a picture that just shows the street full of people when we got that award. It looks like it goes on forever, you know, but yeah, it was a great turnout.
As of 2021, the National Main Street Center estimates its programs have sparked $89 billion in community reinvestment across the country, with more than 300,000 buildings renovated and 154,000 new businesses established. And Main Street advocates here in Florida say they're not done yet. Vivian Young left the Main Street program after 4 years as coordinator, but she remained involved, serving on the panel that reviews Main Street applications. She says the program has evolved.
The program initially was communities 5,000 to 50,000 with very concrete downtown areas, and it's expanded a lot over the years to include areas that are known more for their cultural and historical significance, like Eatonville comes to mind, districts within large cities like Allapattah in Miami-Dade County, and other things like that. So the program has grown and changed and broadened over the years.
Communities continue to set new goals. For example, in Arcadia, Main Street hopes to attract more volunteers, while DeLand wants to focus on increasing residential space.
Main Street is the opposite of sprawl. And so we want to increase the density here. We need more residential. We've got a few upper floors that are still not, I'll say, you know, best use, not occupied. You know, they may be using it for something, but more residential, perhaps more even office space.
And of course, Chattahoochee has a transformational plan of its own.
Some of what we've been planning all along and brewing the soup, if you will, we've been working it, and it's just about ready to come to life.